Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware, 2 screens, 1 notebook. Are they kidding? It's TWiCH, people. Thunderbolt for Ivybridge, Windows 8 tablets, and some pretty stylin notebooks all coming out from Computex. What OnLive does best and more. It's all coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 173, recorded June 7, 2012. Computex, Thunderbolt, tablets, and notebooks. Oh my.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TWiCH6. And they now offer free domain registration with annual plan subscriptions. And by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/TWiT.
Welcome to This Week in Computer Hardware, the show on the TWiT network where we talk, guess what, computer hardware, the biggest news, the biggest stories, how-to questions that you send in. We love them. I'm Patrick Norton. Joining me as always is the man, the myth, the benchmarking legend, PCPer.com's Mr. Ryan Shrout. How are you tonight, Ryan?
I'm doing okay. Not too bad. Busy with Computex this week, as we will see in our collection of news items to go over.
It is crazy. TWiCH. Yeah. TWiCH at twit.tv is the email address if you want to send us a question. You got a question about a product, anything like that, we'd love to hear it. We should probably jump straight into the Computex news. If you're not familiar with the Computex annual show in Taiwan, kind of like Comdex used to be, but different. And
in a different continent.
Different continent. Well, yeah, it's kind of like, it's funny because it always seems like it's more PC parts more than anything else.
It very much is. Computex is in Taiwan, which is where, you know, companies like Asus and MSI and Gigabyte and Compal and those kind of companies really are based and designed. They don't all do manufacturing there anymore, but that's where a large majority of their kind of headquarters tend to be. So it is very PC component focused, although they all, as we'll see throughout the show, very focused on notebooks and tablets and that type of stuff. Everybody is getting into that as well.
Now, was the Matrox DS1 dock for MacBooks using Thunderbolt, was that actually at Computex, or was that just a rare Computex, non-Computex story this week?
I think they first announced it at Computex. Maybe they announced that they're pending availability. It comes up in our Computex stream of news at PC Perspective, so I think that counts. There was actually there is. If you take Windows 8 tablets and Ultrabooks as the top 2 type of things that we talked about, Thunderbolt was up there as well. Intel was eager to push Thunderbolt technology on Windows, and that some of these accessories that were at one point, you know, kind of Mac exclusives,
right? Because
of the ability to actually get a Thunderbolt connection. That's kind of coming to an end.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the technology itself, you know, we talked about last week a couple of motherboards from Asus and MSI that have Thunderbolt integrated on them, and it's the same technology essentially that you get on if you have a MacBook with Thunderbolt technology on it. It's the same port, it's the same chipset, and the same devices will work with it. The big question, of course, is cost, how compatible it is in Windows drivers and all that type of stuff. Apple had a lot of time to kind of perfect that for their product launch. So the Matrox Thunderbolt dock that you mentioned specifically, this is the a DS1 dock. It's a Thunderbolt dock with a dual-link DVI display output on there, a gigabit Ethernet, a USB 3 port, 2 USB 2.0 ports, and then audio, headphone, and microphone jacks on it as well, and that does require external power. So it's a pretty neat breakout box in terms of if you've got a small form factor PC or a laptop, you know, you plug this into your Thunderbolt connection, and now you have DVI output, internet, high-speed USB, regular USB, and audio connections, which is you know, that's a pretty good mix hardware. The only major complaint about this, I guess one of the two major complaints, is that it doesn't have a Thunderbolt pass-through on it. So this is one of the benefits of Thunderbolt is that you can daisy chain devices, right? So I have a Pegasus R4 behind me that's a Thunderbolt external RAID array. But it has a pass-through Thunderbolt port on it, so you can connect another device. You could connect another RAID array, or you could connect a display or something like that. This Matrox device would either have to be your only Thunderbolt device or your terminating Thunderbolt device, depending on what it is.
It's funny. So this is, I mean, it literally is a dock. It's like replicating all your desktop ports. You plug all your desktop hardware into it, except for your Thunderbolt devices, and then you plug this into the Thunderbolt/monitor port on your Mac. It's funny. I was actually using a Seagate's Thunderbolt adapter for the desktop drives earlier today, and having a pass-through port is really nice because if you don't have a pass-through port, you cannot connect both a drive and a monitor to your MacBook at the same time. It'll be. Well, we should probably go ahead and talk some more about the fact that there are actually Thunderbolts. Some of the stuff that showed up at Computex. Gigabyte was showing a motherboard with dual Thunderbolt outputs on board.
So that's actually the first. That's good news, right? So the Asus and the MSI boards that were released last week only have one single Thunderbolt controller and one Thunderbolt connection on them, and we saw a couple of options. This one from Gigabyte. This is the Z77X UP5 TH motherboard that it supports 4 channels, but it's 2 ports, right? So each port has 2 channels bi-directional, right? So they're claiming with a PLX PCI Express bridge chip that they get full bandwidth on each of those ports, so the full 10 gigabits per second of connectivity on those, and you get 2 ports. So you can use a display and this Matrox device if they don't have pass-through enabled on them.
And it's funny. If you haven't actually played around with Thunderbolt yet, I'm going to drop a story into the rundown here really quickly. It is not cheap. It's funny because all the drive I've seen so far do not actually include a cable, which sounds shocking, right? Because USB cables are cheap. USB 3.0 cables are cheap, except if you take a look at what they cost, Thunderbolt cables actually are like $50 for a 2-meter cable. And there it is, one of the only Thunderbolt. There's like 3 I've found. They all sell for $50.
So this is the Apple one, and it was $50. That's if you're buying like $100 external SATA dock for a Thunderbolt connection, you're adding 50% of the price to get the cable to connect to it. Even this R4, this Pegasus, kind of really high end RAID, which is like an $1,100 device, doesn't ship with a cable. They don't ship it with a cable
because nobody wants to stock them. Well, it's funny. The Mac Rumors actually did a really cool teardown. I take that back. I want to say maybe Ars Technica or iFixit did it. Mac Rumors was the first place I saw the report. It was actually sent to me on Twitter. There's 12 chips inside of it. You can see inside of the sort of the plug end of it that's held in those hands right there. But like 12 chips, tons of smaller electronics components. Genum's chip, the primary chip, is described as a transceiver that enables reliable data transfer of cutting-edge speeds over low-cost 10-gauge copper cables. Somebody's been cutting and pasting a press release. But you're basically, talking about an unbelievable amount of hardware and essentially firmware that's in your cable. It's a pretty sophisticated cable. It's allowing them to get the kind of speeds they want to deliver.
You have to upgrade firmware on your cables on this because I don't want to have to.
No, I'm pretty sure you don't have to upgrade firmware, but just somebody who's like, there's got to be firmware on that chip.
Yeah,
and it's funny. So, did Asus talk about the Thunderbolt EX add-in card? Did they give a price for the Thunderbolt add-in card for the Z77 and 877 motherboards?
I don't think they've actually announced the price for it. So, I think a little while ago when the Z77 motherboards first came out, Ivybridge desktop first came out, we showed lots of Asus Z77 boards. Basically, their entire allotment of boards had a little header on it that said TB header, and that was for Thunderbolt header. We didn't know at the time what form this add-in card was going to be, but if you go to that story and you look up the Thunderbolt EX, it's a by-4 PCI Express add-in card that Asus is requiring for you to connect up to that header just as kind of verification. In other words, you won't be able to buy this add-in card and stick it in any system or any motherboard. It has to be one of these Asus Z77 motherboards. And then it's a little kludgy how it actually installs, because on the outside of that card, on the Thunderbolt EX, you'll see a mini DisplayPort / Thunderbolt connection, which makes sense. If you scroll down a little bit there to the next photo, you'll see the card itself. Yeah, there it is. Mini DP Thunderbolt. And then below that is a full-size DisplayPort connection. And then if you go down to the next photo, you'll see how it's installed, like the implementation for it to be installed. And it's kind of weird. So you've got that internal header inside your system that connects to the card itself through that little cable, just to verify that you're using a properly equipped Asus motherboard. And then you'll see a DisplayPort output on the headers at the top of your motherboard going in to the Thunderbolt EX card. And this is basically what allows you to hook up a Thunderbolt display to the Thunderbolt card, or at any point in that daisy chain, and still be able to use the integrated Ivybridge graphics through that. So that's kind of like their workaround for not being able to run the traces on the PCB necessarily. For that, they were able to do it with like an included external cable. Now, it's not going to be an expensive device. I can't say it's going to be less than the cable. Let's put it that way. You're going to be able to buy this card for less than the cost of a Thunderbolt cable. And that's good news for people that have these Asus Z77 boards, and potentially good news for when somebody releases more of an all-purpose kind of generic add-in card.
Yay.
Yeah, indeed.
No, we just need to have more devices that support Thunderbolt. Corsair announced a new set of SSD drives, the Neutron series, driven by, quote, lambda controllers. Today at Computex, Corsair announced a new line of SSDs. The 4th generation lineup will sport a new controller made by Link A Media Devices, aka Lambda. Their announcements boast a system-on-a-chip design, but of course every SSD has a system-on-a-chip because you need a whole lot of brains to write the information onto all of the memory. The Neutron standard promises 90,000 read, 85,000 write IOPS, assuming 4K random, and 550 megabits per second reads and 370 megabits per second writes in sequential writes. And Neutron GTX improves those with considerably greater write performance. Alan is eager to see the new drives and the performance of the new controller. Benchmarks will be coming in the near future. And basically, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting because I've never heard of this company before at all. LAMD, Link A Media Devices. But on our podcast last night, we had this discussion, and at first I was like, oh man, this unknown company creating their first, they're an SoC kind of company making their first kind of controller. I was like, I'm not sure I'm really into this. Somebody made a good point. It was like, well, 3 years ago, had you ever heard of SandForce before or IndieLinks? And I was like, yeah, okay, that's actually true. So we'll give these guys the benefit of the doubt. It's interesting to see Corsair kind of partnering with this company very closely, the first to announce the exclusive. Haven't seen anybody else talk about it yet, so we'll see if they have some kind of extended ideas, maybe acquisitions or anything like that in the long run. But anytime you get more competition, I'm glad to see it. Completely side note, not in the show notes. It's already sold out too. Tiger Direct had the Samsung 830 SSD, a 256 gigabyte model for $199 without a rebate, like instant rebate.
Send me a text next time.
Hey, you should follow me on Twitter because I posted.
I do follow you on Twitter. I was probably in the dentist chair while that was going down.
But so that was like 77 cents a gig for a really good drive that Alan really likes. So keep an eye out for those deals. They're getting better.
What exactly makes a concept motherboard beastly, even if it's from Asus?
Weird ideas, right? So Asus has a history of kind of creating these unique motherboards that you're pretty sure are never actually going to be sold. They're just there for demo, and prototyping purposes. 2 years ago, we saw a motherboard that had a Radeon 5870 chip integrated on it, right? This year, they're taking it a step further. The Zeus motherboard, pictured here, which looks pretty sweet. Like it looks nice. They spent some time on the design of it.
It's pretty slick.
It has, you'll notice it's a socket 2011. It's got 8 DIMM slots, all looks good, lots of SATA ports, but you notice there's no PCI Express slots on there. Instead, you have these heat sinks on that part of the PCB where it would normally be. And underneath those heat sinks are 2 AMD Radeon 7800 GPUs running in Crossfire. integrated on the PCB. If you look all the way at the very bottom of that motherboard, you'll see 2 8-pin and 2 6-pin PCI Express power connections where you would have to plug in power still from a power supply, obviously to give the GPUs the juice that they need for that. Very interesting. Not useful. I can't, I think it would be more useful to have a motherboard with an integrated processor than it would be integrated graphics. People would upgrade their GPUs more than they would upgrade their CPUs, is what tends to be the case. So that's the Zeus. And then the Wolverine is one that has a 40-phase power configuration. Typical Z77 motherboards have like 8 phases from Asus. And this one has 40, which basically allows you to have more granular power being sent to the processor, better for higher power conditions like overclocking, better for lower power conditions like underclocking and trying to get the lowest possible voltage, but also something that probably will not ever be sold just due to the cost constraints, adding power phases, something like that. I mean, if we go back to that Zeus board, I mean, that would have to be a 6. I mean, if you take if you say the rest of the components make it a $400 motherboard,
right, and
you add in 2 7800 GPUs, I mean, that's pretty crazy. But it's always fun to see this kind of stuff, right? You never know. Well,
it's like concept cars at a car show.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. It's their engineers kind of having fun, and they gave a couple of them a project. Hey, build something cool for us to show up at Computex and get some pictures and some attention and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, it does a pretty good job. Yeah.
The Mars 3 Dual GTX 680 card may or may not be available in a store near you. I kid. It's essentially 2 NVIDIA GTX 680 GPUs and 8 gigs of RAM on a single PCB cooled by 3 fans, ladies and gentlemen, and heat pipe aided and a heat pipe aided fin array, 3 PCI Express power connectors, and a dual slot design. Oh my goodness, I don't know if you want it, but Tim, who wrote this up for PCPro.com, desperately wants one. Quote, even if he has to get a new case. Do I even want to know what this is going to cost?
No, you don't, because what I'm very curious is how is this different than a GTX 690? Because the 690 is very, very close to being 2 full 680s already. And when
this
the
should
Mars
be like another 10% performance.
Oh, God, I hope there's more than that. When the cool thing about the Mars 2, the one previous to this, was that it was with the 500 series. It was actually 2 580s, and nobody had done that before. NVIDIA's 590 was 2 very, very scaled back 580s, so it made sense for this kind of super ultra limited edition card. I'm not sure how this one's going to differentiate if and when it actually goes on sale.
I think it'll differentiate by people that want that last little bit of SLI performance, but don't want to go to the trouble of purchasing 2 cars for considerably less money. Was that obnoxious?
Let's, I think now would be a good time to take a short break before we continue on our Computex stuff to mention one of our advertisers, actually. And we're going to mention, how about, and not as regular, but we love them just the same, Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. That's right, they're back for the month of June. Squarespace, you guys know who these are. If you're interested in creating a website for editorial purposes, for photo sharing purposes, for news covering purposes, you just want to try it out for yourself, mommy blogs, anything like that. They can do anything from high-end business accounts down to, like I said, individual users that just want to play around on the internet. They have easy-to-use user interfaces for creating these blogs. You don't have to be a CSS expert to design it. They have a lot of templates that you can start and choose between. And then the kind of WYSIWYG editor that you have for being able to move blocks around and kind of edit the design, just like you would with a Word document or anything like that. It's actually really, really cool. What's new recently is that they've simplified their subscription plans and provided reduced pricing, now offering plans as low as $8 a month, which is pretty nice. They have iPhone and iPad and Android apps for updating the blog on the go. You don't have to worry about getting your laptop out, finding Wi-Fi access or anything like that. They are using the Google's web font library, so you can have unlimited access to the 300 web fonts that Google applies uses for that. Online resources, 24/7 support. They have live webinars. So if you're new to web development, you're new to website creation, they have some tools to help you out, learn your way around. They have modules like blog modules and form builders and Flickr photo displays, great for photographers and people that want to show off stuff like that. Twitter widgets, Google Maps. They have tracking, so you know how many visitors you're getting. They have great SEO built in, search engine optimization that's built on a cloud infrastructure. So if you do get a lot of traffic, you don't have to worry about your site crashing and going down, which is crucial for anybody who wants to grow a website or any kind of outlet like that. So you should definitely give them a try. Use Squarespace for all of your website needs. Build it, host it, update it anytime. And you can get a free trial if you go to squarespace.com. No other URL necessary than that. Squarespace.com. Sign up for your free account. No credit card is even needed. You don't have to give them that and worry about canceling it after 30 days. You just log in, create a login, try it out, start building your website. And then if you decide to purchase it, you can use the offer code TWiCH6 and you'll get 10% off of your first purchase on new accounts. And they also are offering, as a special for this month as well, the ability to get a free domain registration if you have an annual plan subscription. So again, the squarespace.com offer code TWiCH, TWiCH 6, and we thank Squarespace for their support.
Thank you, Squarespace. So we talked about some of the desktop news. Obviously, a whole bunch of Thunderbolt coming at Computex, or coming in the future, announced at Computex this week. There are also a whole bunch of Ultrabooks and tablets. Gigabyte.
Oh, boy, are there.
Oh, my goodness. So Gigabyte, who is somebody we normally associate with motherboards, has actually decided to release ultra-portable notebooks. Was this completely out of the blue?
Not really. I mean, they've offered notebooks before, but their kind of U.S. presence is close to zero. I think you'll see both Gigabyte and MSI try to make big pushes into the U.S. market like Asus has. And these Ultrabooks that Gigabyte showed are really kind of pushing several ways. So, you're brand new in the market, you're trying to make your way in. So they built one that actually is built out of carbon fiber. The X11 is an ultra lightweight 11.6 inch notebook, 975 grams, 30 millimeters thick, that type of thing. But it also has a discrete Kepler GT650 GPU in it or something like that. Maybe those are the U2400 models as well. But, they realize they're the underdog. And so they're going to take more chances maybe than some of these other guys in terms of let's just throw a bunch of stuff out there, see if anything gets really hot and sells and gets us a name out there. Yeah, I don't know about availability on these. I'm hesitant about because we've seen some pretty cool notebook designs from Gigabyte in the past, but their availability and stuff in the U.S. has been fairly hard to find. It's been fairly mediocre or fairly minimal, I guess we'll say to say the least. Well, but I like the idea of a fully carbon fiber, like actual carbon fiber, not carbon fiber appearance, like actual carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber is good. So. Yes. Are you feeling a little stronger about the Acer Aspire S7 notebooks? You're a little, you're liking the idea of the Gigabyte availability. You question. How are you feeling about Acer's Aspire S7s?
Obviously, they have a little bit better background, so we do it that way. They have more experience with Ultrabooks. These models, the Aspire S7s, look pretty nice. They are Windows 8. They are touchscreen enabled. They're not removable tablets or anything like that, right? They're just touchscreen laptops. So we're going to see how that form factor actually plays out. One of the interesting things is
much better with Windows 8.
The Aspire S7 has 180-degree hinges, not 360. You're not wrapping it around behind it, but 180 degrees, meaning you can lay the laptop completely flat on a table. Why? But why? Why is that interesting?
I actually had a laptop in the past that didn't quite give me it gave me more than this. It gave me about 170 degrees, and I actually used it that way quite regularly. Maybe because I'm a freak, or which is entirely a possibility. It does some things where you can actually, especially with games and stuff, you can lay it down and people can actually look at it from the other side. I think it has potential. I may be the only one in the audience right now.
I guess I don't see a use case for it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but they're great looking machines. The 13-inch model has a glass back to it, kind of like the HP Envy Spectre kind of had. So those are interesting, and Windows 8 touchscreen laptops, and as we'll talk about here with the Asus stuff later, I mean that's the big deal. And then Acer also announced the Iconia tablets,
Windows 8 tablets.
Right, Windows 8 tablets were the big deal at Computex this week. Everybody had them, and they came in like 100 different sizes and shapes. And the Iconia ones are pretty standard looking, 10-inch I think they had, and a 7-inch 10.1 IPS display, which is nice. And they're claiming that with the dock they get about 18 hours of battery life. So they're these are dockable ones as well. So that's the Iconia W510 and the W700.
That is very shiny. It's a video from Engadget, who had a rep out there at Computex. It's kind of funny. There was also the TWiCH convertible notebook and tablet with dual displays from Asus, and this
was the most unique one for sure.
Pretty. So it basically, how is the lid spinning on this one?
The lid does not spin at all. You close it, and there's a screen on the back.
Oh, that sounds actually like something that would have been demoed at the Intel Intel briefing at CES. So
there's it's a normal Ultrabook, right? When you open it up, you've got a keyboard and you're working on it like normal. When you close it, on the back is another screen that when you close it, kind of turn now you're looking at a 11-inch tablet, Windows 8 touch interface tablet device, which is this is one of those devices where I'm not sure exactly if it's going to make it to market.
Right.
It could be really cool. It depends on, I don't know. There's something about having a screen on the opposite side of me, a little bit unnerving, never knowing exactly if it's off or on all the way.
Getting scratched in your notebook bag.
Yeah, right.
Consuming a lot of additional energy.
Maybe this is similar to when we went from the clamshell cell phones to the glass ones, right? So now you have to be a little bit more careful when you put your laptop in a bag. Maybe you have to do that kind of stuff. But it's an interesting kind of extension of the idea of being able to have a tablet and a laptop in the same design, as opposed to just like the dockable models.
And there was also, of course, the Asus Transformer Book, quote, an Ultrabook and detachable tablet, which is apparently
interestingly not an Android device, even though it has that kind of Transformer brand.
Is that a bad thing?
I think it's a little bit confusing, because I think most people consider the Transformer brand to be an Android tablet, an Android convertible type of thing. It's the exact same idea as the Android-based Transformers, but now it's Windows 8 and x86. So it's still an interesting device, right? So now you're talking about an Ultrabook that has a detachable screen that is a Windows 8 tablet. And I think in this one, there's a discrete GPU in the keyboard dock. So when you disconnect it, you're just using the Ivybridge CPU and integrated graphics. That way, when you dock it, you have not only more battery life, but you have a little bit of extra processing power too, which I think kind of maybe puts a little bit of an interesting spin on it as well. I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that there's something a little bit structurally less sound about the detachable designs as opposed to the integrated designs. I don't know, but I need to get some hands-on time with this one as well, because I think the Transformers on the Android side have been very successful, and I'll be curious to see if that kind of carries over into the Windows realm too. It's
funny because Asus also released the announced the 800 and 610 Windows 8 tablets, which actually are ARM based. Tegra 3. Yep. Tegra 3s.
Tegra 3 on the 600. And then actually the tablet 810 is actually Intel Atom. So it's not Ivybridge. It's not an Ultrabook. It's just a lower cost, lower performance, detachable tablet laptop. See what I'm saying? When we got into this, it was like there's like 100 different combinations of hardware, screens, keyboards, tablets, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not as excited about the 810 because Atom processors and I tend to not get along very well. But this should be low cost at least. But the 600 is the first Windows RT Tegra-based device that has been shown, which is interesting. So that will be, I'm very eager to spend more time with Windows 8 RT, the ARM version of Windows 8, just to see how it performs, how it's different, all those types of things.
Yeah, it's amazed me running on the Windows 8 desktop how much learning the keyboard shortcuts has made. The more keyboard shortcuts I learn, the more I actually like Windows 8, which is ironic, since because Intel's like, Windows 8's coming, and we all need touchscreens and voice control and unusual notebook designs. Going back a little bit to our core, DV Nation's Ramrod PC review, something I think you can be excited about, because I think you're over the 42 different flavors of notebooks and tablets at this point from Computex.
Yes.
This is interesting. DV Nation, kind of a boutique PC manufacturer, looking for an angle, looking for an edge.
Yeah, and they get it just by being very unique in terms of what their performance metric is. A lot of these high-end boutique brands, they just simply go after quad GPUs or overclocked water-cooled processors, which are great. But DV Nation, with the Ramrod PC, decided to do something different, really focus on the storage side. We talked a little bit about the specs of it, I think, a couple of weeks ago. It's an overclocked Ivybridge E-system. It has 64 gigabytes of memory, which are used in very, very interesting ways. It has a 480 gigabyte PCI Express-based SSD, and then it has a pair of Seagate Momentus XT hybrid hard drives, so SSD and spinning disk drives on that. So what I think is most interesting here is that the 64 gigs of memory is broken up into a couple of different configurations, right? So 42 gigs of it is actually being used as a RAM disk. So this is a disk that Windows sees as a drive letter, essentially. That's 42 gigs in capacity, and you can read and write to it. You can install things to it. It runs like performance benchmarks like 7 gigabytes per second. That's 8 gigabytes per second read and 7 gigabytes per second write. That's the kind of numbers we're talking about. So in terms of just raw performance, that's pretty impressive. What is interesting there is that the whole idea of a RAM disk, you can do this today. You can get software and buy software that will do this with any amount of memory you have and on any system. But what the Ramrod PC does is every time you shut down or reboot your machine, the memory leaves, right? It's not a static thing, right? So anytime you shut down the machine, it has to write 42 gigs of data back to your system. And anytime you boot it back up, it has to read that 42 gigs of data back into the memory. With a traditional hard drive, that's a real issue. One of the benefits of this PC is it has the OCZ Revo drive PCI Express SSD. So reading and writing 42 gigs of data to and from it is pretty quick. Right. And the software's smart enough that when you shut it down, it only writes what has changed to the image file. It doesn't necessarily have to write all 42 gigs to it. But every time you reboot, it does have to read it back in. So, there's a little bit of a boot delay on shutdown and startup because of that. But it's not super dramatic, especially with that PCI Express SSD. So 42 gigs goes to that. And then they also used 6 gigs to create a cache for the PCI Express-based SSD, and as 6 gigs as a cache for the hybrid SSDs. So, you've got your system memory being used all over the place for all different kinds of reasons, and you still have, I think, 6 or 8 gigs left for, your just regular, boring system memory, right? So
running applications, playing video games,
boring things like that. Yeah. So the only other interesting benchmark I'll tell you is the access times. On the Momentus XT, which is the hybrid SSD, we're talking about 18 millisecond access times.
Wow.
Yeah, it's okay, right? OCZ Revo drives, we're talking about 1/10 of a millisecond, right? And that's the PCI Express one.
That's a healthy difference.
For the RAM disk, we're down to the thousandths of milliseconds of access time. So if you have applications, this is a PC. It's got a good gaming card in it, but it's not really meant for gamers, right? This is, if you have an application that you just are storage bound, this is going to take care of that, right? If that's your issue, this is the PC for you. They had some issues. I complained about the case. I thought it's a $5,000 computer and a $40, $50 case that needs to be changed, and some other things that
they spent all the money on the memory. That's a good thing.
If you're buying a $5,000 computer, you probably want it to look nice,
I'm
right?
buying a $5,000 computer. Either somebody else is paying me for it, or I don't know.
That's possible too.
On one hand, I agree with your point, but I think it's also one of the problems with a lot of the boutique machines that we've seen over the years is they have these amazing, incredible cases, and it's the same crap everybody else has inside of it, just with better cable layout.
Right. Agreed. So, but it's a great system. And obviously, in terms of what it was meant for, just raw storage performance, right. it was really impressive.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, database queries. TWiCH, TWiCH, and TWiT.tv is the email address. We love your questions. We're going to get to a couple of those right after we take a moment to thank our sponsors.
That's right, Netflix. Netflix, our classic, our good friends, one of our favorite companies that exist in the technology world. They help us stream thousands of TV episodes and movies directly to us instantly, and you can take advantage of that too to save time, money, and hassle. You don't have to go to box machines. You don't have to worry about returning your VHS tapes to Blockbuster. I don't think that analogy really works anymore. The best part about Netflix is you can watch it basically anywhere. Your Mac, your PC, obviously, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android phones. If you want to watch on your TV in maybe a more typical viewing environment, there's lots of ways to do that. The Xbox 360, PS3, the Wii, those all have support for Netflix and streaming applications. You can get an Apple TV, you can get a Roku box, your TVs, your DVD players, your Blu-ray players. Not all of them, but a lot of them will already have support for Netflix streaming capabilities built into them. So check your manuals, go to those websites, your manufacturer site, and look up the specs for your TV. You might already have support for this built into your hardware and not even know it. And I imagine a lot of you have those game consoles anyway, so you probably already have that capability. One of the cool things that you can do with Netflix is you can watch a show. You can start watching a show in one place, finish it in another. You can stream as many episodes as you want, as many times as you want. There's no limits on that. It's one fee for the month for all of that unlimited streaming. And the best part is we're going to let you have a chance to try it completely free for 30 days if you go to netflix.com/twit. TWiT. You can try out the service. You can watch as many movies and TV shows. They don't limit your libraries when you're in this kind of trial mode. You get to try it out for 30 days. If it doesn't make a dramatic impact in the way that you consume media, you're doing something wrong. But I'm sure that won't be the case. So netflix.com/twit. Use that URL when you sign up. We really appreciate their support, and we appreciate you guys supporting Netflix to support us. So we thank Netflix again.
Take a moment to answer a couple questions before we go. It's been kind of an exciting week in news. By the way, probably an exciting week next week. Worldwide Developers Conference. Some of the people actually in the chat room talking about the Mac Pro refresh that everybody expects. Should be exciting to see whether or not we get Ivybridge in a big way, and some interesting ideas of what's coming up on the Mac Pro side of things, or the MacBook Pro side of things. Yep. Both taking a moment to answer an email from Lee about multiple monitor support. Lee writes in, "Hi guys, love the show. I have a few questions about triple monitor support. I do not want or need Eyefinity. I'm using the monitors for productivity and video, not gaming. Question 1, can you extend a desktop to 3 monitors using the HDMI port, or is the DisplayPort necessary for triple monitors not being used in Eyefinity? Mostly a cost consideration. Question 2, can a graphics card extend the desktop across 3 monitors running at different resolutions? 20-inch 1650 by 1050, 17-inch 1280 by 1024, and a 1920 by 1080, aka 1080p HD TV. Assuming the answer to question 2 is yes, what GPU do you recommend or graphics card do you recommend for driving 3 monitors? Again, gaming is not a consideration, only video and web surfing and spreadsheets. Great big spreadsheets."
My favorite. I love them. The answer to the first question is probably the most complicated. Right. You do have to have DisplayPort connection. I'm assuming his first 2 are DVI. It doesn't really say, but I'm assuming the first 2 are DVI. Yes, to use the third one, you do have to have you have to use the DisplayPort adapter. The good news is you can get those active adapters now for as low as like $25. I know Sapphire makes one. Right. Several companies who I can't think of right now.
DisplayPort to HDMI adapters.
Yeah, but you have to make sure it's active. because you can only use the passive ones if you are only going to use 2 displays. So you have to have an active one, but those have come down significantly in price in the last year or so. So yeah, you will have to do that. And then the second one is, yeah, you can absolutely extend the desktop across 3 monitors of all different sizes. The only problem you have is like lining them up right now. Interestingly, I have a 30-inch display here and a 17-inch laptop monitor in front of me, and I am doing that same thing, right? I'm stretching it across. And so the biggest issue I had was I had to move in the control panel, like where the 2 monitors were,
Right.
so that when I dragged the cursor around, it actually went straight across. So yeah, you could do that.
It could just be a little frustrating. There's like a learning curve because you end up with like this box here and then the next one's over here, and you drag your mouse and it hits the edge of this desktop, and after a while you learn you have to go like this when you're moving your mouse around between them. You can arrange the monitors like in any configuration you want to. When Windows doesn't care. You can put them next to each other, you can put them above each other, you can make an L shape with them. The biggest issue I think, Lee, is getting used to the fact that you're going from monitor to monitor to monitor, and also probably calibrating it, because it's amazing to see that there can be white, this bluish gray color that's supposed to be white, and then this other gray color that might be kind of bluish, but it's definitely not white, because I'm dealing with a dual monitor setup, and I'm like, oh, the backlight's dying on this monitor and it can't be calibrated. Oh my goodness, it's driving me insane because I go from this background. It's just the fact that the background of like Gmail or all my documents are 2 radically different colors. It's a little jarring.
It's something you'd never notice until you put a second one next to it.
Or a third.
Yes, yeah.
And suddenly it gets incredibly frustrating. It's still cool, though. I got to say, I actually love running multiple desktops, simply because you can put the stuff that, you need up all the time, whether it's your email client or your palettes or something. Yeah, once you start using them, it really changes the way you use computers, or your computer. We got an email from Patrick about cloud gaming. This isn't a question, Patrick writes, but a response to what you guys were saying about cloud gaming services such as OnLive and Gaikai. I agree that there's a good majority of PC games out there that would be hindered by the latency issues on these services. First-person shooters with their Twitch-based gameplay would obviously suffer the most. However, I was a beta tester for OnLive's service, and I remember playing Mass Effect and Burnout Paradise on the service without noticing any lag because of their slower gameplay. The strengths of these services are sweet graphics without throwing the money down on a fat gaming rig, and the ability to play a game instantly. This would cut down on the time it would take to download a 25 gig MMO and allow folks to quickly log in and start playing or paying. I think these companies would make a killing with high-quality graphic browser social games. Again, MMOs. If you look at these cloud gaming services, they usually have first-person shooters at the forefront of their advertising. I think if this tech was marketed towards its strengths with games that can keep up, then people might pay more attention instead of cringing at the thought of lag time with their gaming systems.
I agree 100%. In my experiences with these technologies is that they're trying to market it towards the hardcore gamers who tend to be FPS guys and gals, and it doesn't really work there. So he used examples of Mass Effect and Burnout Paradise. Burnout Paradise is one that I had that exact experience with, that I enjoyed playing it on OnLive. And one of the things that I think actually makes it more manageable is when you're using an Xbox controller hooked up through USB to a PC as opposed to a keyboard and a mouse. Mm-hmm. So inherently in a game controller, there's a turn down of the fidelity that you have in the control. It slows you down in terms of how fast you can turn around. Whereas with your mouse, right, you can move it as quick as you can move your hand, right? But there's limits to the rotation rates on control sticks and that kind of stuff. So I think he's right. I think that there are ways that they can make it better and that they can make it appear better on some or a lot of games even. But there are still some games, and I think most people would be surprised on what games it doesn't work well on. There was a Xbox Live game called Braid that was available on Steam, and it's like a Mario-esque style, but it had this really cool mechanic of being able to rewind time and all that kind of stuff. And I was using an Xbox controller with that, but the problem is because it was so timing based, that latency was very apparent. It would be like playing Guitar Hero over this type of stuff. I can't imagine it working very well because of it being a very timing based game. Whereas, a game like Burnout Paradise, where you're basically driving as fast as you can, running into things, it takes a little bit less fidelity, I would say.
Right. It's funny how things work out. Like, one, I think it's funny that you always see the first-person shooters. It's like there's some segment of people marketing games that figures the only one people get excited about are first-person shooters.
Right.
Which if you look at E3, that might not actually be a bad guess to make if you look at what kind of got the big coverage there. I'll be curious to see where OnLive is and Gaikai in another year or two to see where those systems, where they evolve to, or if they get absorbed as, something that goes inside of cable boxes or something like that.
Which is very likely. Stranger
things will have happened. We're going to wrap it up for questions on this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware. We promise we'll have more of those next week because there'll be no Computex. So unless there's an insane amount of news next week, we should have time for more questions. Twitch at TWiT.tv is the email address. TWiCH at TWiT.tv. What's coming up on PC Per this week, Ryan?
So I will have a review this week of the Core i5-3470. This is a quad-core, non-hyper-threaded Ivybridge processor that has the lower-end HD 2500 integrated graphics on it. So we'll take a look at that. And then I will be gone the first part of next week at the AMD Fusion Developer Summit in Seattle or Bellevue, and learning about what progress AMD and the software ecosystem has made in terms of taking advantage of AMD APUs and that kind of shared memory space that they have the goal of. So that should be, hopefully she'll produce some pretty interesting information there.
There you have it. We're going to be looking at Thunderbolt drives next week. There's an announcement from a major hardware vendor, and that gave us a chance to take a look at some Thunderbolt drives, to compare the USB 2.0, USB 3.0 Thunderbolt performance. Not directly, because we don't have one of the new Thunderbolt motherboards yet. Windows 8 shortcuts, we're going to give you a list of those. They really make Metro cool. And we talked about the L Prize winning LED bulb. I don't know if you tuned in for this shocking episode of Techzilla, Ryan, but Robert Herring got the new Philips L Prize bulb, which is basically like a Department of Energy contest to make the most amazing A19 bulb ever, which is a standard 60-watt incandescent replacement. And it's like a $50 LED bulb. And we found one with almost exactly the same specs from Philips for like $20. So we're going to do a side-by-side. There are reasons one bulb costs more than the other. But you'll have to watch Techzilla.
All right. I'm in now.
I know how you are about
show. I love my light bulbs, so let's do it.
Energy Star, baby. Energy Star. That's it for this week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.